let's continue with the next problem. So now we are going to solve a scope problem from HackerRank. Our objective is today we are discussing scope. Check out tutorial from following. No, you don't need it. If you want, you can watch it. The absolute difference between two integers a and b is written as a minus b. The absolute difference between two integers. Okay, the maximum absolute difference between two integers in a set positive integers element is the largest absolute difference between any two integers. Okay, what is our task? Complete the difference class by writing the following. So we are going to use a class of difference. I think let's create it. A class constructor that takes, let's build our constructor public of difference. What parameters do we need? As a parameter and saves it to elements instance variable. So here we are going to store elements. What is an elements? A constructor array of integers. So here an integer array is going to be provided, which we can call elements. Saves it to the elements instance variable. So the variable we need to provide the elements array. Right, so we are going to make it equal our local element and the parameter element. And a compute difference method that finds the maximum absolute difference between any two numbers in elements and stores in the maximum difference instance variable. So we have an instance variable again, which will be storing our maximum difference number. Let's copy this. It didn't work. Okay, we cannot copy. Maximum difference. And is there anything else? We need to initialize it here again, so that it can be belong to the class itself, right? So let's copy this maximum difference. Let's make it we don't have to initialize it, right? Or do we have to? From this class, we are not providing anything here, right? Therefore, we don't have to make anything here. So even we can make this part public, so we don't have to reach from the constructor. We need a compute difference method here. It's a compute difference method that finds the maximum absolute difference. Compute difference, which is it going to be taking any parameters inside? No, it doesn't look like any two numbers. Compute difference, which finds maximum absolute difference between two numbers. So let's check out this part again. Then we can return to the compute difference method again. Okay. You are not responsible for reading input for the terminal. I think this part is belong to the Java 8 part. Okay. That we have to write it, actually the inputs. The logged solution class the editor reads two lines for if inputs. So this is going to be our first input, which will be, I think, declaring the number of elements of the array. The first line contains n, the size of elements array. The second line has n space separated integers. Okay, let's initialize our scanner class and create a new instance. System.in. So we need to get the size of the elements, which we can call n. From scanner class, we need an method, next integer method, and we need to ask from the user the list of the array, the elements of the array. For this, we can use for loop, but I will going to use a different approach for this purpose. So I will use a stream API for this. Okay. So let's first initialize our integer array, which will be passing through this difference constructor, right? So let's call this r. So we need to create an arrays, right? After that, we from arrays class we can call stream API because this is this is a how can you say an array, not a list, array list. I think not array list; it's an integer array. So from stream API, we are going to call. In here, we are going to get the elements of the array from the user. Therefore, we will use a map, but at first we need to provide the information about what is the name of array, our array. So basically, we haven't created an array here, right? We could just create an array here, right? Like this, a, for example, new integer, or and which is an element, right? We could call this like this. However, there is a more simple way for this. We can just copy this part and remove this part and create our new object inside the arrays string. Okay. So after that, we will call map method inside stream API, and from our map, we need to get inputs from the user. And at the end, we need to make this an array type. Okay. The usage of stream APIs are varies actually. So you have to all the time you have to make some practices or use it somewhere, or you can just use ChatGPT or Gemini for you to write the stream APIs. It is the usage of it varies very much. I mean, maybe for if you want to get used to by using stream APIs, you have to make so many practices. Even I haven't completely understand the concept, or I'm not understanding actually. I'm not fully comprehensive by the usage of for the usage of stream API, but I will be making more practices by using stream API, right? So from arrays, we can call system API, but after that we need to provide an arrays list arrays, right? So we can create it inside it, or we can just initialize it before the system API part, and then we need to, for example, if you put here 3, this part is going to ask from the user 3 times as input, right? That's it. And after this, let's close our scanner class. We don't need it anymore. Then we need to give an output, which is the, let's say, when we make summations or difference calculation here, what is the maximum number we can get? For example, 1 minus 2 is 1 in absolute value actually. So the maximum value of absolute value we can get 4. So we can return 4. We have our method and class. So we are going to just create our instance of difference class. And let's call this diff new difference. We need to give this array list into our constructor part, right? So from our difference class, we need to call our difference compute difference method. So after we call this, we need to print after we call this, what is going to happen? Let's look at here. So as you can see, we have provided our array list. So we will call a compute difference part. So we need to make some calculations so that our compute difference can print, can store our value inside this part. And after that, we are going to call and print out the maximum difference. So how can we call this? From diff instance, we will call maximum difference instance. Okay. So after this method, it runs. Here, we don't return. The return type is not specified. Therefore, here we are going to store our maximum value into this maximum difference. Right? It's here it defines like this. So after absolute difference between any two numbers and stores in the maximum difference instance variable. Yeah. So let's write the compute difference part. So here, how can I say? We need to get what kind of approach we can get here. Here, let's get a maximum value of absolute difference value and store it in a max value. And after that, we will call our difference. What was the name? Maximum difference. And we will make this equal to maximum value. Okay. So how can we find the maximum difference value? So we can use a for loop here, but this for loop is going to be a nested loop. So each time, for example, if we say there's two nested for loops, let's say uh, like this for loop, okay, and after that we again called a for loop here again, I and j, for example. Each time it will, for example, say 1 minus 2, and absolute value of is what? 1 minus 5. So it will start in a anywhere list again, and it will try to find the maximum value of it. So this is more complicated. Okay, here let's use a stream API, which will you will see that it is more easy. So again, we need to call our arrays class because we don't have an array list here. So we have an arrays. Let's call a stream API method, and after this we need to call something, but before this we have to provide our array, right? We can call this dot elements. For by using flats map method, we will call a flat map method, and inside this we have to call again an array list again. Why? Because in order to compare two different elements, we have to call two times the two times this array, right? You will understand more if I continue to write it. Elements. So from here, and also we are going to get our map method. So as we can see here, our first element I is going to store the value of first, for example, and this part is going to get a j element. So it is going to make differences of I and j, I minus j. Okay, so we have to give uh, a calculation from met class dot absolute method. So j minus I or I minus j, it doesn't matter because it is the absolute value. If it will check from here, you can see that, for example, as I explained before, I is going to be first element, for example, and j is going to be the second element, for example. It will try to make difference of 1 minus 2, 1 minus 5, like this. This is the purpose of it. And it will return an array, right? Because of this arrays part, it is going to return an array. And after that, we need to get the maximum value. So we have a max method. Okay. And that's it. So we don't have to return anything else. It is going to just, after we find the maximum value, it will store inside the max value, and this is going to be equal to the local class instance variable, which is called maximum difference. And here it is going to be written. Let's run the code and let's see if there's any syntax error or something. Compute difference type required. So here we need to provide our type, of course. Right? So we need to give a integer and let's return our maximum difference value. Otherwise, this part is not going to return anything else, or this part. Okay. Uh, let's run this code again. Okay, so optional integer. So this part is going to return an optional. Therefore, we need to use an or else, for example. From our or else, we can use the first element. Let's run this code again. Good. So that's it, I think. So we provided an array, okay, by using a stream API. So after this, we created an instance, and from the instance class, we called compute difference method. So in order to make this calculation, after the calculation is made, we called the, the maximum difference instance, right, here. We get the value of this from here, and we calculate it from here. So what is the logic behind this? Let me explain it again. Because we are using arrays here, uh, we are going to create an arrays class, and from that we are going to use a stream API. And here we can provide a parameter of these elements, which represents the integer array for us. After that, we will use a flat map, as we can see here. We are using a flat map here. So it gets a first element, and after that, it creates again another array list, another integer arrays, and inside here we get the second element or third element. So we make the difference, absolute difference each other, and we get the values and store in an arrays list or in an integer arrays, and we find the maximum value. And because this returns an optional, we need to provide or else the first element. Okay, that's it. Let's submit the code. All tests are successfully passed.